Welcome to Women's Wealth, the podcast with me, Joanne. My mission is to educate, inspire, and empower you all to step into your own life of wealth. That feeling of being so rich in your mind, body, and soul. I'm so happy to have you here. Let's get straight into it. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Women's Wealth with Joanne. And I have my first guest with me today. I have Justin. I'm going to ask him to tell you all about himself. I have done a nice little bit of background research, but I think I'll leave it up to you, Justin, because you have a lot. And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty for today's podcast. So I know you're going to be very knowledgeable, and I probably won't have to do much talking today. So welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, and just to let you know as well, you are only the second male guest. So on the podcast, I don't have any many males on the podcast. So you're the second one. So you have the badge of honor there.
I'm very honored. This is amazing. It's an interesting place I found myself in because my clients are about 85% women and have been.
Yeah.
I've been coaching people for about 10 years now. And it's historically been about 85% women. There's a number of reasons for that we can dig into that I've found over the years. But I mean, I guess elevator pitch of who I am, we could go by what's on the internet, which is I'm a nutritional therapist and I teach metabolic health and I do different coaching programs and I own a couple of supplement companies. But I really think of myself more as what I call an architect of freedom. I'm teaching people to escape all of the toxic bullshit that has been programmed upon them from the time they were little children. And the thing that I rally against probably more than anything else is diet and fitness culture. Again, which goes back to why I think my client list is what it is because women in particular have been so hypersexualized their entire lives. And literally have come to believe that their worth in the world is correlated with their size or the way that their body looks. And what ends up happening is we have what's called a health and wellness industry, which is anything but. The industry is designed to constantly remind you that you are not good enough and you need to change. So we have this entire, multi-decade situation with health and wellness and diet and fitness culture that is basically getting healthy sucks. No pain, no gain. If you want the body of your dreams, you have to suffer and sacrifice and punish yourself and spend hours in the gym and all these things. It's just like restriction, suffering, sacrifice, self-loathing constantly.
Yeah.
So I design programs that are the exact opposite of that. We help people take back their health through the lens of nourishment, abundance, self-love, and enjoyment. So the way that I teach it on the simplest level is if anyone is telling you that they are getting you healthy and you are miserable following their program, fire them and find someone who knows what they're doing. Because if something is actually good for your body over the long term, right? Before we started recording, you talked about longevity versus like 3-day boot camps, So if you're trying to improve your health over the long term, that has to feel good. You have to feel improvements. You have to feel improvements in your energy, improvements in your cognitive function, your mental focus, your libido, your body temperature, all these different things that we measure in all of my programs. But getting healthy doesn't suck. It's insane that we think that that's the way that it is.
Yeah, I know. I love that. And I totally agree. I'm definitely on the same page. And I've obviously, from a woman's point of view, experienced the pressures, back before social media, it was in magazines and on TV, it's been rammed down your throat from the age of, I'd say young teenage, and I think even younger now, because I didn't have social media. So I always say that I'm lucky for that. But I can remember having magazines as a teenager and just in your face, and it was like the early 2000s. So women who were definitely not fat, they were pulling out, muffin tops and, you shouldn't have any of this shape to yourself. So then it's, I need to be skinny. And then fast forward to now, and it's kind of the opposite of that. But you need to be skinny, but you also need to have a bum and boobs and lips and all of the things. And it's just like, whoa, like it's toxic. And then when we really step back and have a look, like you said, it's not health and it's not wellness, and even down to the beauty and skincare, it's all toxic. And what we really need to do, and I'm going to leave it up to you, you can share your thoughts on this, that, taking a step back from that and like, what do I actually need? What do I enjoy? And what can I do for as long as possible until, 90, 100 years old, hopefully, that we're not going to look back and go, oh my God, look at all those years I wasted. And from a woman's point of view, I know friends, I've had friends for 20 years who they've always been on a diet. Like, they're on a diet. Every time I see them, they're on some crazy diet. And obviously, when I track back and think, oh my God, I've known them for so long, and they've never actually not been on some kind of diet or watching what they eat. And it's so sad. And I'm guessing you find this with your clients as well.
Yeah, it's constant. I have a video that all my clients get called the weight loss roller coaster. That is this. It's like I literally have a graph up that is just like the up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And it's the definition of insanity. He's trying the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? So, like, the most common thing that I hear when someone comes to work with me is I've tried everything. And I have to help them see they have tried only one thing. They've tried one thing with 1,000 different names, right? It's like I did keto, so I was restricting carbohydrates. I did carnivore, so I was restricting all plants. I did vegan, so I was restricting meat. I did Weight Watchers, so I was restricting all calories. I did intermittent fasting, so I was restricting all food, right? And it's like you played the game of restriction forever, over and over and over. The only thing that you have done consistently is not give your body what it needs to be healthy.
Yeah.
That's what you've tried. That's not everything. Because over here on the other side of the pendulum swing, where I operate in the world, is actually bringing you to maintenance calories and above, like literally treating you like an athlete, where we're like, okay, all these other things you've done, the 1,000 other diets you did, they destroyed your metabolic health. They catabolized lean tissue, your bone density is not where it needs to be, all these things. And again, this is actually where the global epidemic of infertility comes from, is constant starvation diets.
Yeah.
Right? I have something, a side note, but I have something in my company, it's called Clovis. And the thing I'm most proud of is we have Clovis babies. It's our loving term for any woman who has come to me who has at least one failed round of IVF. Some of them have done multiple failed rounds of IVF. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get a baby. They come to Clovis. I essentially double their food intake, get all the poison out of their life. And then 9 months later, they call me crying because they have now conceived naturally. And then we get to track the whole pregnancy. So they're like eating well through the whole pregnancy. They're sending me pictures of their baby bumps. Then a beautiful baby comes into the world and we call them Clovis babies. And I love it. It's just like the most clear example of like all of this dieting nonsense is destroying your health. And you're never going to be able to live up to the societal expectations because they're always changing, right? So what, like you said about the early 2000s, I was born in 1986. So in the 90s, we grew up with just like rail skinny women. And then, like you said, all of a sudden, like the Kardashians become famous and Kim Kardashian does her whole break the internet thing. And all of a sudden it's like, you need a giant booty, an impossibly small waist. You also need boobs. So let's cut your body open and make that happen. And it's just like this constant, not good enough.
Yeah.
And who knows what it's going to be 10 years from now? The trend is going to change 10 years from now. So then what are you going to do? You're going to reverse all the other stuff that you did to make your body look the way that you were told it needed to look? It's like, it's really a crazy cycle.
Yeah, it is. And I always joke that when I was growing up, if it was the woman, does my bum look big in this? The answer needed to be no. And if my mum was getting, does my bum look big? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And now it's the opposite. Like, does my bum look big in this? And if you said no, that would be offensive because you're like, oh God, no, I want it to. And that's just my one lifetime. So I always think, women older than me, what they've been, that they've been through, and the younger girls now, like you say, they're becoming Kardashians who they don't even look like that. Like, no offense to the Kardashians, but they don't look like obviously they do aesthetically, but if they'd left themselves alone, so we've got all these aspirations to look a certain way and have our skin to look a certain way, flawless, no pores, no spots, no pimples, no wrinkles, and forgetting all of the hairbrushing and the plastic surgery, and they've probably got these people with diets, and the cook being normal working 9 to 5 people don't have a chef, and you need to fall back in love with food because you can't just you don't have a chef just putting on your plate what you're meant to eat. And I'm sure with your clients as well, working to falling in love with food, do you find a lot of women are scared or have a fear of food, the ones you work with?
Yeah, terrified. And that's the thing, is like my programs take the opposite approach of all other programs, where like if you go into another program and they give you a certain calorie amount or macros or whatever, they're always giving them to you as limits. It's like, you can't eat more than this. This is your 1,200 calories a day. That's all you get. And if you're hungry, here are some tricks. Just drink some water or eat some fiber so your belly feels full. And I'm like, oh, okay. So essentially kill yourself slowly. That sounds like great advice, you know?
Yeah.
So in my programs, if I even share, most of the time I don't even share calories with people, but I will give them macronutrients. And those are targets. They're meant to hit those targets and go beyond them. And it's the hardest thing for people to do, right? Because the concept of food versus poison is probably what I'm most known for out in the world. I make these videos and I tell people that if you just eat food as it exists in nature, you no longer need to worry about calories and you no longer need to spend hours in the gym. So all
Yeah.
of the complex stuff, like the New Year's resolution stuff that people do that they hate and they're suffering and they think getting healthy sucks, all of that goes out the window if you simply learn what is food and what is not. Like an
Yeah.
example of this in the U.S., they just banned red dye
Saw that.
number 3. You
Yeah, I
know, so it's
saw
like,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, sure, we can argue all day about calories in, calories out, but if some of those calories are red dye number 3 that are
Yeah.
literally poisoning your metabolism, you
Yeah.
have a serious situation in your hands because that's not food.
Yeah.
So,
I watched, I can't remember who, someone's podcast today. They were talking about it, and the red dye is actually, was it the something that comes off coal when it's burnt and then they scrape it up? It was something from, I don't know. It was gross anyway, and I was like, oh my god. And I know in the US you do have it a
mhm.
lot with the, it doesn't even have, and the name is that difficult. They just call it red dye number 3. Is the other one that going to, is it blue dye number 5 is next or something?
Yeah,
I was,
there's like yellow 5, there's like blue 40, there's red dye number 3. I think there's another red dye. I mean, there's tons of them. It's
yeah,
insane.
it's
We
crazy.
have over 10,000 ingredients that fall on a list called GRAS, GRAS, which is generally
Yeah,
regarded as safe. We have over 10,000 ingredients on that list. In the UK, where you come from, it's less than 4,500.
yeah,
So America is literally the least healthy country in the world at this point, and we spend the most on healthcare, which
yeah.
is outrageous. It doesn't make any
It's
sense.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And I like what you said about learning. So I went through this myself recently, and I share this a lot, that I was not so much dieting. I think I have good genes that I've never really had to diet, but I used to do all the healthy eating. So the vegetarian I've done, and pescatarian, and just things, thinking like, oh my god, I'm so healthy because I'm drinking green juice and all of the things. And then it was at the start of last year, I was actually craving steak, and I was like, and I hadn't really had steak, and I was like, do you know what, I'm going to eat one. And I did, and I loved it. And all of last year I was like, I'm just going to scrap all of that and making sure that if it comes from the earth, if I know where it's come from, I'm going to eat it. And I've never felt better. Like I feel, yeah, I'm way more tired. Like I don't do any more exercise, but I'm stronger. So, and you can see the muscles. So before I was skinny. I was trying. I'd go to the gym like, why am I not putting muscle on? Like I'm doing all of the things, and
Yeah.
I'm lifting weights, but I don't look any different. I just scrapped all of the diets, scrapped being a vegetarian. You know, just eating. I know where it comes from, and plants and vegetables and full fat milk, and I live in Dubai now, so camel milk as well.
Wow.
Venture out to, yeah, and I really do feel better. My skin is better. I'd go and push to say, when I look at pictures of myself, I look younger. I used to be withdrawn, grey
Mhm.
eyes, and it's just getting this out to other people as well, that everything we need, and I know it sounds quite spiritual and woo woo, but it was created for us, whether you believe in God or spirituality, but it's on this earth, it's there for us to eat, to drink, the plants, the vegetables. And if it comes from anywhere else, then if it's man-made, just step away from it.
Yeah.
So it's there, it's for us. And I don't know, if I'm guessing you don't follow any diets or vegan, or but
No. I mean, I
no.
guess it would be called Clovis because that's like what my company. So like there are people like I've run thousands of people through the programs. We have a big
Yeah.
online community on Facebook. There's over 11,000 people in the private group, and people have Clovis tattoos, literally.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
like I mean I feel amazing that I've been able to be a part of their transformation, and people have had such profound transformation, losing over 100 pounds. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna speak to the woo woo part of this too because it's very important. Um, I really don't think that you can get to a place of optimal health and wellness, or I should say, I don't think you can get to a place where you're living your most aligned, authentic life unless you get rid of poison.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, you have to. It's like the base of the pyramid, right?
Yeah.
And like you're talking about, does it come from nature? I use an analogy where I'm like, listen, this is very easy to picture in your mind because you could hike through the wilderness every day for the next 100 years, and you will never stumble upon a bagel tree. It's just not going
Yeah.
to happen, right? Or another example, I always tell people it doesn't matter what diet you're on, if you're vegan, if you're carnivore, whatever. And I say, okay, we have two foods. I'm going to place two foods in front of you. You have to say that one of them is food, and you have to say that one of them is poison. You have to choose. Food number one is steak. Option number two is strawberry Pop Tarts. Which one is food? Which one is poison? No one fails that test. A
Yeah.
100% of people will get that correct. So we know on a fundamental level, we can pretend that health and wellness is super complicated and all this and blah, blah, blah. It's like people know what to do.
Yeah.
So my official title is a nutritional therapist. I didn't realize when I became a nutritional therapist that like 99% of my work was going to be therapy because I give people the most simple blueprint for health and wellness you could possibly imagine. And then 99% of my time is spent untangling why they won't do it,
Yeah.
why they keep choosing poison, why they won't go for walks, why they refuse to get sunshine and they sit in front of their computer all day long. And that's where we have to untangle the personal development piece. We have to do the inner work. And most of my time is helping people see that they've built a life for themselves that is completely out of alignment with the person that they want to be in the world. So
Yeah.
just like a drug addict or an alcoholic, they're using toxic food as a dissociation mechanism where they can escape life for a little while.
Yeah.
So like, I always tell people if the very best part of your day is when you're driving home in rush hour traffic from a job that you hate and you get a Wendy's Frosty, if that first bite of Frosty is the very best part of your day, I have my work cut out for me because we have to untangle every aspect of your life to figure out how you got here.
Yeah.
And it's not until you truly love yourself that you will have the internal fortitude to continually say no to poison. If you love yourself, why would you put poison in your mouth? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's very true. And I shared about this in a few times on my podcast. Exactly that for myself, that I used to suffer with anxiety and have very low self-love. And again, that's when my diet and was the worst ever. I remember one day I think I had 3 McDonald's in one day, but there was obviously some subconscious belief that I didn't think I was good enough for the good food.
Yeah.
But then my mindset has changed. Now I'm like, I look at food differently. It's nourishment, it's fuel, and I love myself. So why would I put this horrible stuff in myself? You wouldn't give it to, and if you flip it, and I always use the best friend analogy, would you give your best friend poison? Would you feed your best friend this stuff? And everyone's always like, no. Or, the words that you use to yourself. Would you say to your best friend, you're fat, you're ugly? Look at, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Shouldn't be best friends. But those words, flip it. That's how we should be talking to ourselves. And exactly what you've just said. As soon as I started to really love myself, all of those other things dropped into place.
Yes.
Just even this week, actually, I just went for a walk to the shop and bought myself a bunch of flowers. And I can't even tell you how amazing I felt when I got home. And all I did was I walked to the shop. So I got the vitamin D, I don't wear sunglasses, so I know I'm absorbing it. So I'm like, yes, this is what's happening as I'm walking, looking at the birds, taking in all these little things that I wouldn't have done before. Got myself some flowers. I actually bought myself some steak, got some flowers, walked back. And I was so high when I got home. I was like, oh my God, I feel amazing. I made a reel. I was like, yes, I need to share this with everybody.
Yeah.
Put it on social. I feel amazing. But that was so simple. I walked to the shop. Oh, that's it, full stop.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's the same with screens, right? It's like if we look at screen time, it's like that's just like think about the fact, like I always like talk about just the irony of like I get paid to tell people to not eat poison, eat food that exists in nature, and get outside in the sun and go for walks.
Yeah.
How have we come to a place in society where that is news to people? They
Yeah.
have to relearn going outside is good for me. The sun does not cause cancer.
Mm.
Food is medicine. Poison is bad for you.
Yeah.
Right? It's like when we start to tease this apart, but I mean, I understand because it wasn't until my late 20s that I figured this out.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of the body image stuff was I grew up in the 90s. I was watching Arnold Schwarzenegger, and wanted to look like that, but I was a fat kid. And
Yeah.
then fast forward, I became a professional musician. So I had a 15-year music career. And I was doing over 300 shows a year. I had a reality TV show on ABC by the time I was 25 years old. So it was like you take a young kid with tremendous body dysmorphia and a lot of insecurities, and now he's living under spotlights, literally. He's having his
Yeah.
picture taken, he's on TV, and all these things. And it was just this constant spiral in my 20s where all I did all day in my spare time was just punish myself with fitness. I've
Mm.
done the most extreme fitness you could possibly imagine, every single form of it. And it was all this like, I will beat my body into submission. And it doesn't work over time. And in my late 20s, I finally, I got into therapy. I learned about the paleo diet. My niece was born terminally disabled, which is what was like the real big trigger for me getting into health and wellness. I made a baby formula for her. And it was wild. It's just the next 10 years was me just untangling all of these systems that are pressed against us, which is how society got here, right? So, like, I actually use the frequency of anger as a tool, especially with women and especially with parents. Because when I try to help them see that, like, in the 80s, 80% of food companies were bought by cigarette companies who hired scientists to make addicting food and created cartoon characters to sell poison to your children,
Yeah.
right? And then we go back further. Procter and Gamble took an industrial waste product that was cottonseed oil, turned it into food, bribed the American Heart Association with an amount of money equivalent to $27 million today to say that animal fats like butter were bad for you and seed oils were good for you. And now seed oils are in everything in the US. We have that piece of it. Then we have the body image piece. Like you mentioned the Kardashians, right? I think that people forget. Have you ever heard the story about like a frog in boiling water? Like it's slowly
Oh,
boiling.
yes. And then I was watching I was on a podcast the other day. I heard it the other day actually. So you put it in, if you slowly boil it, he stays in there and you can boil him alive. But if you put him in boiling water, he jumps out because he knows he's going to kill him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we don't know as our environment is slowly changing, we get used to it day after day after day. So I try to remind people like if you go back to 2008, there was no YouTube. It's like imagine a world with no YouTube. It's like very hard to imagine a world with no social media. So for men, I have them go back to the year 2000 and watch the original X-Men movie where you have Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. And there's this scene, he's shirtless. And at the time, it was like, this is the peak male physique. This guy looks amazing. Oh my God, look at him. If you go back and watch that movie, Hugh Jackman from the year 2000, he couldn't sell $17 fitness programs on Instagram. He doesn't have a visible 8-pack abs. He's not 6% body fat. He doesn't look like an absolute mutant, right? And at the time, we were like, oh my God, this guy's in such amazing shape. And then you fast forward to the mid 2010s. I don't know if you're aware of what the Kardashians did. So my fiance started a huge beauty company. She was like a business
Yeah.
mogul. And she knows a lot of things behind the scenes in the beauty industry. Like you talk about the Kardashians, like each individual Kardashian spends over $1 million a year on treatments for their body and their skin. And in the mid 2010s, their mom had this idea where they were like, well, we need these girls to look perfect all the time. So they reached out to all the paparazzi and they
Mm.
said, listen, you guys are taking these candid shots. You're catching us when we're at the grocery store or whatever, and you're printing it in the magazines. Paparazzi don't get paid that much. So the Kardashians said, all the pictures you take, send them to us first. Our team will Photoshop them. We'll send them back to you. You can post them in the tabloids and say they're candid shots so our girls look amazing, and we're going to pay you more than the tabloids pay you.
Oh my God.
So all of a sudden, women are seeing a representation of like, oh my God, Kourtney Kardashian's she's at the grocery store and she looks perfect. How can
Yeah.
I compete? And it's all make believe. And now fast forward to today and it's all filters and Instagram, whatever. You can click a button and give yourself 6-pack abs. Like it's an AI. It's
Yeah.
just crazy. Like I don't think people understand how twisted our minds have been. And we're being controlled like little puppets.
Yeah, it is. And I saw a photo, you've probably seen this as well, that always blows my mind. in the freak show back in whenever it was, 1920s, or whenever they had freak shows, and the fat man there
Yeah.
is, if you he's not even fat. Like
No.
he must. You look at him, and then they on the picture that always pops up on my Instagram. Then they show someone from 2025, and you're like, oh my god, how is our perception? So it's just, again, the expectation, or whatever, the perception of what a fat person looks like 100 years ago. We've now doubled that,
Yeah.
and it's so crazy to think that he was in a freak show. He was just normally. He doesn't even look that fat. He
People were
obviously is really
paying money.
but you wouldn't look at it compared to what we're used to now.
Yeah.
Every time I see it, it blows my mind. I always screenshot and put it straight back on my story. I'm like, look at what used to be in a freak show, and it's actually, even myself, I'll look at it and I'm like, he actually looks quite normal. He doesn't look that big compared to what we. And again, it's like you said, we're just these. It's like we're a big science experiment.
Yeah.
The powers that be, the puppet masters, like, oh, what can we give them? And obviously that goes down, there's all these deeper layers to it, isn't there? That, the conspiracies and the money behind sick people, could talk about that for forever. And it's, lucky that people have people like yourself that can teach people, bring it back to yourself, listen to your body, listen to what you need. Let's just learn the basics, because that's really what we need to know, and try and block out all of this excess noise, I guess. The powers that be.
Yeah.
And
it's more of like a remembering than a learning.
Yeah.
It's like we have to travel back in time. And that picture, the famous picture you're talking about, just for listeners who haven't seen it, he's a literal circus freak show. People are paying money to buy tickets to see him in this freak show, and they're calling him the fattest man in the world. And he looks like an average American today.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's astonishing, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like, so it's not lost on me. I've said this for years on my podcast, where I'm like, listen, it's not lost on me that I have a bachelor's degree in songwriting, and I was a party boy rock star musician for all of my 20s. And I am the catalyst that is transforming people's lives and helping them lose over 100 pounds and helping people leave abusive relationships and quit jobs that they hate. And I don't know how many millionaires we've created in Clovis, a lot of them, because I've convinced people to start their own business. And now I coach entrepreneurs in business and all these things, right? So why? Why are we in a society where I have to be the guy? Like, my niece is born terminally disabled. I watched the medical system poison her, literally, as a weeks-old child. And I get so angry that I start studying biology and biochemistry textbooks and sharing with the world that mainstream medicine is the third leading cause of death in America. Right? And here we are 10 years later. And one of the number one reasons I think we have a health crisis globally is the illusion of authority.
Yeah.
So this is what you're talking about. It's like, we have to see, we don't see how our brains have been programmed and all the money behind it and all these things. Like, I don't have a PhD credential. I don't have an MD credential, whatever, right? But if we look at the highest level credentials in mainstream medicine and all these things, heart disease and cancer are the number one, number two leading causes of death. Old people are almost definitively going to get either Alzheimer's or dementia. Everyone has high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, right? 75% of American adults are overweight or obese. 45% of children are obese. The average 50-something-year-old person is on 12 prescription medications. It's just, I mean, you said it was a science experiment.
Mm.
It is a catastrophic failure. And people still turn and try to say, like, oh, okay, we need to look to doctors, or we need to trust the science, or we need to whatever. It's like the entire industry is bought and paid for. Like, science is a marketing funnel. It's a propaganda machine to sell drugs. That's what it is. So you have to get like angry enough to escape the system. Yeah.
And the scientists that are showing us the data have created the data. And, and sometimes I'm like, oh my God, when people are like, well, especially during, we won't talk too much about 2020 onwards, but when people say, well, the scientists said, like, the scientists, they're told to say that. They're getting paid to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was only 4 years ago, and already you can say, I told you so. At the time, we knew, well, not everybody knew, but if you were kind of asking questions. And I think it's a good thing to ask questions. And I know people like, oh, conspiracy and da da da. Like, no, if it feels off, ask the questions. Because again, this is another thing that I really believe. Again, they don't want us to ask. They don't want us to trust intuition or gut feeling or whatever you want to call it, whoever you talk to, whoever you believe in. It's, when it feels off, ask the question rather than just blindly following. And I do feel like it's the people who do ask questions and who like, oh, hang on a minute, all these people are sick, but we're spending all of this money on this one thing, but then it's something's not correlating here. We then don't have a lot of healthy people. We just have more people taking drugs and they're not getting better, and it's kind of like, this is something's not making sense here. So ask the questions, learn about it for yourself. Mm-hmm. And I would say for me, and if anyone listening to this, I like being able, it's a sense of empowerment because you go and learn for yourself and what's good for you. And I haven't taken a tablet, painkiller, anything, I think for about 4 years now. Yeah. And now that I feel, I don't really get any headaches though, or anything that I used to take the painkillers for. Now I don't really get headaches. But then now I know that don't spend too long in artificial light. Once I've done what I need to do, I go outside. I don't turn the big lights on in the house, get outside and all of the things I've been able to teach myself and learn, like, right, this is good for me. Oh, and I don't get headache anymore. I don't get backache anymore. And the only thing I've done is turned to things that are there anyway. Sunlight, natural, walking, yoga, doing things that I enjoy, meditation, breathing, all of these things as well that are also free. And, we don't, you don't need money to go for a walk. Just put your shoes on outside. And all of the things as well that, and I've said this before, and I also think it, when you go to, take an animal to the vets, and it always about the vets, like, so what are they eating? Are they drinking? Are they, moving around? Are they exercising? And I'm like, why does our doctor not ask them that? Yeah. And I going to the doctors and, hindsight, at the time I didn't realize, but now I know. I was run down and I was a school teacher at the time. I used to teach in school and I wasn't drinking water. I wasn't going to the toilet because you're busy, and you don't get chance. So you're holding on to everything most of the day and drinking too much tea and coffee and microwave meals and, rushing home, not sleeping. And I couldn't shift a cold that I had. And I went to the doctors, came out with, and because it's insurance here, 2 bags full of drugs, inhalers, don't have asthma, all of the things. And I sat at home and got a pen and paper, wrote down all of the drugs and what they were for. I was like, I don't even need any of these. Like, so I managed to, obviously I got better. And then it was only maybe a year after, I was run down. And I could list the things I wasn't doing, not exercising, not drinking water, eating crappy food, just micro meals because it was easy at school. Mm-hmm. And like, well, that's why I was sick. But the doctor didn't have any of that. He was like, right, okay, here's all of these drugs, go off and take them. And luckily I didn't. They just sat in the first aid box they all went out of date and I threw them away when I did my big no drugs in the house anymore, clear out. But it's, now it's empowering. I'm like, right, I don't need any of that. And if I do get a little bit of anything, it's essential oil, bit of peppermint around the ears, Yeah. Turn the light off, stop looking at my phone, put my phone away if I've got a headache, drink a glass of water. And it's giving that empowerment back to people. Yeah. So I went off on a huge tangent.
I love it. Oh, it's important to share that, like your own experience is the best thing that you can share with anyone.
Yeah. So where can people find you then? So your Clovis website, I will put everything obviously in the show notes, but where can they find you? What can they find you doing?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the best place to go, all of my social media handles are at Justin Nault Official, which is my first and last name, Justin Nault Official. Yep. I recommend going to Instagram. Just follow me on Instagram and send me a message. Just say, hey, I heard you on a podcast and I want your foods list or whatever. Anything, I'll send you the foods list for free and then I'll just ask you some questions. And if I can help you, I'll help in any way I can.
Cool. And I found your Instagram. You have 2 Instagrams. Is one personal one, business, or you blend them together?
Yeah, so there's a personal one on there that is it's going to be switched to private just so it's easier to find me. Justin Nault official is the official one with all of it has the most followers, and that's where all of my business is happening. So the personal one will probably get switched to private so people don't get confused. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I saw him down. I was like, I will ask him about that, and I'll put any. And what message would you like to leave for the listeners today? Just last, I always ask closing words. I know it puts you on the spot, but
no, I love it. The biggest thing, you already spoke to intuition, right? It's like if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, this makes sense, or you learned something that you hadn't thought of, or there's a different lens that we're looking at reality through, and you're like, wow, that makes a ton of sense. And you feel something in your body, like your stomach, or your chest, or your throat, whatever. Like if you're feeling something and this feels like it calls to you, don't sleep on that feeling. Like take action now, because that's your intuition telling you, I'm not comfortable where I currently am, and I need to make changes. And the longer you put time between listening to the podcast and taking action, the less likely you are to do something about it.
Yeah. I love that. That's perfect. That's a perfect point to end on. Thank you so much. I will put everything in the show notes. And of course, listeners, if you have any questions, you can reach out to myself or Justin. And I'll see you all in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.